On today's show, NBA preseason basketball is back. The Knicks' new look offense under new head coach Mike Brown. The 76ers youth showing some promise, plus power ranking the NBA's best Twin Towers lineups. It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every single night. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And joining me is my partner in crime, as always, David Ramil. David, on our brand new day, our brand new slate here at Locked On NBA. I had to miss the debut episode last week, man, but I'm excited to be back with you.
Absolutely, man. A lot to talk about, I guess. The preseason basketball is right around the corner. I know we got our first taste of it today. Should be an exciting season. I'm looking forward to covering it with you.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun ride as always. First, we want to thank you guys so much for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen each and every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, $5 only. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. And on today's show, we're going to be tackling the sole preseason game that we had the chance to be able to witness and talk about. And my goodness, David, I don't know about you, but I'm a fiend for basketball to the point where once the preseason gets here, I'm like, yes, give it to me. I need basketball back in my life. So even though it's a preseason game, I was excited to see it. We saw the Knicks taking on the 76ers in the Abu Dhabi exhibition game. We're going to talk a little Knicks first here with the kind of new look offense, new look scheme under new head coach Mike Brown. We'll get into some of the youth movement for the 76ers kind of on display in this game and what VJ Edgecombe might be able to provide to the Sixers this season. And then later in the show, we're going to be power ranking the best Twin Towers in the NBA. So let's start things off with host of Locked On Knicks breaking down the biggest takeaways he had from this Knicks 76ers game. Let's start out to Gavin Shaw.
The New York Knicks finish off a 99-84 victory in preseason game one over the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm Gavin Shaw of the Locked On Knicks podcast. We all know, though, preseason is more about intel than wins and losses. So what do we learn today about the New York Knicks? It seems like Mike Brown's initial inclination, as has been rumored, is going to be to start Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns together with Josh Hart coming off the bench. We also saw second-year pro Pacome Dadier get the start today with OG Anunoby out due to injury. That is fascinating as there's a whole lot of reporting suggesting he will possibly get traded to create an extra roster spot to accommodate both Malcolm Brogdon and Landry Shamet. So that is certainly something to note going forward. Also get a first look at Mike Brown's new offense for the New York Knicks. It features a whole lot of off-ball movement, particularly for Jalen Brunson relative to what the Knicks ran under Tom Thibodeau. I enjoyed the creative usage of the Knicks bigs, both Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns operating as dribble handoff hubs. We even saw a little give and go between Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns. Mitch hit Jalen Brunson backdoor for a shot where he was ultimately fouled. It's more passing than Mitchell Robinson has done pretty much in the entirety of his career. I think a creative usage of Towns, if he starts next to Mitch, is going to be essential because he was an afterthought offensively at times when those two played together. It seems like that's something Mike Brown is emphasizing early for the Knicks.
David, I know it's preseason, so you take everything with a grain of salt, right? But I do think it was, a very much kind of vested effort here by the Knicks to try and, run some actions where they could get Jalen Brunson off ball. And we certainly saw in, their postseason run, this past campaign, it was really easy for defenses at times to really load up on Jalen Brunson and not necessarily take him out of the game because he's so, singularly talented that he's still going to find ways to score. But I do think it's important to be able to find ways to make life easier for your star players. And that's what Mike Brown certainly brings to the table as a head coach, right? Some creative offensive schemes to be able to open things up, open the game up for Jaylen Brown, open the game up for Karl-Anthony Towns. How much do you think Mike Brown is going to be able to elevate this Knicks offense that was already the fifth best offense in the NBA last season?
It's tough. I don't know how much he's going to do. Like you talked about it with me when the hire was first made. I wasn't exactly bullish on it. It just felt like more of a recycling move than anything else. Brown, for all of his creativity, I don't know that he's capable necessarily of taking a team that was on the precipice of contention to that next level. But I do like your point, too. I think it makes sense that you want to try to maximize what this roster can do, specifically when it comes to getting Brunson easier looks throughout the season. So as long as he can continue to do that, I think that benefits the team. But ultimately, it comes down to whether or not this team can continue to stay healthy and be able to get the most out of their offense and still play a solid level of defense, because we know that that was their Achilles heel last year, has been for some time now. And with Karl Anthony Towns in the roster, it's not going to get any better. So I think there are concerns there. At the same time, I think Brown can be slightly better than what they saw in Thibodeau last year. I know everybody's expecting this kind of wide sweeping changes, and we saw a taste of it. But again, take everything with a grain of salt here. It's preseason. What might work now will eventually get scrapped, because they're just going to have to go down to what they've been able to do over the last couple of seasons, what they feel most comfortable. And ultimately, it comes down to Brunson being able to get the shots that he wants and being able to carry the team the way he has so often throughout his career.
Well, one thing that we know that Mike Brown won't be shy about doing is actually utilizing his bench, as opposed to Tom Thibodeau. And with some of the additions, getting Yabusele, adding, Jordan Clarkson, like there is some depth there that the Knicks actually have at their disposal that will hopefully keep some of their key guys, fresher as the season progresses. To me, I think it's even less, I expect this Knicks team to still probably be, even without any crazy, overhaul or fancy, scheme rework by Mike Brown, I still expect them to be a top 5 offense in the NBA. They have all the tools to do it with Brunson and Cat as your offensive dynamic duo. Like, they should absolutely still be a top 5 offense in the NBA. My biggest question is, what can he get out of this team defensively, right? Can he drag them from being, just a middle of the pack defensive team, which they were. They were 13th in the regular season. They were just 9th in the postseason. They were middle of the pack defense across the board. Can Mike Brown get this team to be at least a top 10 defense? They don't need to be a dominant defensive team. They don't need to be top 5 or even, top 7, like just inside the top 10, a few spots improved, I think would pay some serious dividends given how potent this team has been on offense over the past few seasons.
I don't see it. I think playing Robinson is going to help, but I just think that at the same time, again, starting Brunson, starting Cat, your two, the bookends of your defense are both known for being porous defensively. They're not going to be able to challenge much. Brunson tries maybe a little bit more than Towns does, and yet they're both not known for, they're both known for being very poor defenders individually. And I don't know that you're going to get that much out of the other players. It's asking them to do a lot more perhaps than they should be. And I think that ultimately, every team has their weak points. These two weak points in particular do tend to bring the overall team defensive concepts down a notch. And so I just don't know that he's going to be able to get more out of them. Any team starting these two players is going to have some deficiencies on that end. And there's nothing that Brown can do about it. So I think to your point earlier, though, it's about maximizing what this team can do offensively to the point where, maybe you give up 100 points or 110 points or 115 points, but as long as you can score 118 to 120, you'll be fine. And I think that's kind of where they're leaning for, which is not much more different than what we saw from Thibodeau over the last couple of years.
And look, I know that there's not, really a ton of historical precedent, unfortunately, for some of these like offensive juggernaut teams that, are kind of, lukewarm at best defensively, achieving title success at the end of the season. But,
Sure.
Does this, is this a bit of an indictment on potentially the Knicks' actual title chances, right? If they can't, cobble together some version of what looks like an actual, respectable defense, a top 10 defense, that's usually, the proof for, hey, if you're a contender, you're a top 5 or you are a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense in some capacity, right? Maybe your offense is your calling card and you're top 3 or top 5 there, and the defense is, kind of waning and it's further towards, the 8, 9, 10 range, or vice versa. You're a stalwart defense, top 2, top 3, and the offense is maybe the one that struggles a little bit, but you need to be in that top 10 bracket on both sides to really have a chance for a title, it feels like.
Yeah, I think the Knicks are such an interesting team in that regard. And if you listen to last week's episode with Jake Madison, the host of Locked On Pelicans, neither of us were particularly bullish about the Knicks' chances. Like, the Knicks seem to have this idea, Knicks fans in particular seem to have this idea that they're almost automatically in contention based on what we saw last year from this group. And I'm just not buying it. I just think they're going to still have some of the similar problems. And I don't think that they're going to do anything differently. So much of it hinges on OG Anunoby. Is he going to be healthy enough? Is he going to be able to be that kind of linchpin defensively? Because he is very good on the defensive end. He's one of the best. And as such, you're asking him to do a lot, but unfortunately, injuries have always been a problem. They've always hindered his ability to be out there on the floor, to be able to make that impact as a two-way player. And so you wonder whether or not he's going to be able to finally put that past him. The fact that he missed today's game, not necessarily a strong sign that he's gone past us, again, albeit during the preseason. So they have the right tools there. And I think bolstering their depth is going to help to a certain degree on the offensive end, but nothing that they've done is going to, in my opinion, change much of what they do in the defensive scheme as long as they have those kind of weak points on their starting lineup.
Are the Knicks still legitimate title contenders despite a defense that might be the thing that is their Achilles heel and holding them back? We want your thoughts about the Knicks in the YouTube comments. Coming up, the other side of this first NBA preseason game, the Philadelphia 76ers with some impressive signs out of their youth movement. We'll get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or different investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table, and nobody wants to do that. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your smartphone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. They do all the heavy lifting. You can link your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever needing to touch a spreadsheet. Look, when I first started using Monarch, it was great because it finally helped me corral those different like monthly subscriptions that I wasn't even using. There's no worse feeling than you're going through your day and you check your bank statement and then bam, you get hit with a, $15, $25, $30 charge for some service that you're not even using anymore. You think, oh, okay, I'll cancel it. I'll get rid of it, whatever. And then you don't do it. And then it hits you the same thing, same time next month, same time, same place. And it's still frustrating. And you just keep letting it go on and on and on. Not with Monarch Money. They help you organize all of those so you can finally get in control of your money. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Game Night. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here at Locked On NBA Game Night. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On show for your favorite team. If you want more on the Knicks side of things, go check out Locked On Knicks, or maybe you'll check out Locked On 76ers after we spend a little bit of time talking about them here in this segment. But first, let's throw it out to Locked On Sixers and get their take from this first preseason game.
Take a 99-84 loss to New York, including trailing by as much as 26. But that's not the point. It's preseason, right? How'd they do shooting? Well, I'll tell you how they did shooting. 8.6% from beyond the arc. That's a single digit. 8.6% the Sixers shot from beyond the arc. Yeah, that's terrible. But the silver lining and main takeaway in all of this is that Adem Bona started at center for you, not Andre Drummond. So maybe a view into the future of who could be starting more for Joel Embiid and however many games he's going to miss in the upcoming season. And then VJ Edgecombe, rookie 3rd overall pick out of Baylor, and Tyrese Maxey were your starting backcourt. It's the first time you got to see those two play together. Certainly, as one would expect, a lot to work out, but that could also be a view into the future. Each had 14 points apiece, and Edgecombe even found a way to pull down 6 boards in his 76ers preseason debut.
Yeah, the shooting was pretty atrocious from the 76ers in this game, honestly. The shooting was rough on both sides. This certainly looked like a preseason game at the end of the day. 8.6 from beyond the arc for the 76ers, just 34.6% overall. Tyrese Maxey is Tyrese Maxey. He got downhill a little bit, did his usual things, finished with 14 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. But I do think, right, the story here is VJ Edgecombe, right? A lot of expectations being kind of placed on this young man, and, being drafted to kind of a tricky situation, right? If you're in Philadelphia, right? What is this team this season? Because the 76ers could go 2 very different directions, right? Like depending on the health of some of their key contributors in Joel Embiid and Paul George, navigating through the season, do they get a healthy version of those guys? Will they actually be one of the elite teams in the Eastern Conference the way that they should be on paper? Or is this going to be another lost season for the 76ers where they bottom out and they look bad again, and you're just looking towards the future, and then more rumors start popping up of, okay, are they willing to maybe potentially cut ties with Joel Embiid, all that? And I think that at the heart of that, VJ Edgecombe is in such a unique position to be a really high level impact player for this team, even as a rookie, given his skill set and how he can kind of slot in here. What are your thoughts on Edgecombe at this point, Dave?
Still, I too soon to tell, but I don't know that I'm necessarily encouraged. He gets a starting nod, then winds up shooting 4 for 13 on the night. Was able to get to the free throw line, got 5 of 5 there, but some solid flashes. And yet, in a preseason game, I understand, again, not necessarily something that you can count on too much, but there were some concerns there as far as his shooting, and if he's able to kind of continue to generate those looks, can he knock those down regularly? Is he going to be able to, is he going to benefit from having Embiid and George out there where they get him those easier looks so that he can make the most of his offensive repertoire, or is he going to be asked to carry the team to a certain degree because they'll be out due to injury? So I don't know. It's kind of early, and you hate to say it, but I'm not necessarily impressed just yet about what he was able to do so far. And yeah, it's early. You hope for the best for a rookie. Maybe he'll figure it out, but there's always a chance that he won't.
First off, he did have one almost like the athleticism is just absurd with him though. Like, I mean, we're getting like, I'm talking like shades of like maybe some Vince Carter there, just with he had one where he tried to elevate and yam it over Mitchell Robinson. Like I was thinking it was like early second quarter or something. And that attempted poster. I mean, he's gonna catch a body at some point this season, probably sooner rather than later. And it's going to be loud when he eventually does it. He's going to be that type of finisher. There's a lot to like there, right? Some of the things that he's going to have to work on, as he progresses, as he grows, things about like, understanding, different angles on some of his drives, being able to have the touch and the finishing ability around the rim, talking about that 4 of 13 shooting as well. Just getting stronger, which every rookie needs to do over time. And that's just something that, being part of NBA strength and conditioning programs will ultimately lead to. It's him just being stronger overall. But I do, I saw the other day, earlier, around the time that this game either ended or little thereafter. And, I saw that Kevin O'Connor from Yahoo proclaimed that VJ Edgecombe has the chance to be the most important rookie in the NBA, given the context of how the Sixers could play, right? Because if Embiid is healthy and Paul George is healthy and they're vying and they're trying to make a deep postseason run, the expectation is I think that VJ Edgecombe is going to start, and so what does that role look like, right? If they're playing high level winning basketball, can he be an impactful winning rookie at that level? It's really hard. I don't think people understand how hard it is for rookies to come in and be winning level players right out of the gate. You have plenty of rookies that come in and they showcase talent and there's flashes and they look like they have a bright future as a star or otherwise, but it's really hard for rookies to come in and play winning basketball right out of the gate.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of disagree with that statement as far as him being that important. This team's future might be tied to Edgecombe, but this season shouldn't be. Like, you've got 2 potential Hall of Famers in George and Embiid. They're going to be the ones who have to carry this team. Edgecombe just has to be able to figure out what he does and how he can play alongside those. But I don't know if I necessarily look to him as being not just productive. Certainly, I don't think he's going to be that, because again, as you said, there are rookies who are on bad teams who are going to be able to put up a lot of shots and put up big numbers, albeit in mostly losing efforts. But Edgecombe has a delicate role to play. It's much more nuanced in that he's going to be figuring out how to play alongside us. He just has to be more consistent. And I don't know if those flashes that we see from him, the athleticism certainly there, but can he be consistent in what he was able to provide as a complementary piece in terms of solid scoring, solid shooting, and solid defense, most of all. And I don't know that we're going to get from him at this point in his career. It's too early to tell. Maybe he'll figure it out. Maybe he won't. But there's a lot riding on whether or not he can just blend in more than have to carry this team, because that's not his role. It shouldn't be as a rookie, especially when you have the greats that they have on the roster.
So the Sixers are in this interesting position where they do have some young talent, right? Obviously, Maxi's still on the younger side of things. They've got VJ Edgecombe now. They have Jared McCain, who is still recovering from thumb surgery, so TBD on when he gets back. But and then I will say one other guy that did play in this game, and the stat line doesn't jump out at you, but Adem Bona he has a place in the NBA, and he had a really strong Eurobasket run playing for the Turkish national team, and starting at the 5 for the 76ers in this game in place of Joel Embiid, and there will certainly be plenty of reps for him to play this season with Embiid likely missing various chunks of the year throughout. Really liked what we saw out of Adem Bona. I mean, good solid screener, high energy guy, very much a vertical spacing big, right? Can play above the rim, get over the top of defenses, and has a bit of a surprising amount of touch around the basket. Like he, throughout the Eurobasket, tournament, like he showed an ability to be able to get to, that little like kind of baby hook, kind of push shot over the top of certain defenders. And every time he did it, I thought, this is a bad shot. This isn't going in. And he sunk it every single time.
Yeah. I mean, it bodes well if he's there to play the role of the backup center. And that's the whole thing. Again, I don't mean to belabor the same point, but we're talking about guys that shouldn't be necessarily part of the discussion, other than understanding that they're complementary role players that have a role that is yet to be defined, because until the stars come out and show what they're capable of and how consistently they'll be able to be on the floor, how healthy they'll be over the course of the season, it's all kind of very much up in the air, which is why this team has such a high level variance. They could be really, really good. In my opinion, I think they will be, or they could be extremely poor, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they are. I just think that you're counting on players like Edgecombe and Bona that have potential, but I don't think that you can look at either of them right now and say that they're consistent starting level players at the NBA level. Are the NBA talents overall? Sure. But I don't know that you'd want them to start for too much of the season, or else your hopes are going to be submarined before they even get a chance to really take off.
We want to know which side of the variance spectrum you fall on. Do you expect the 76ers to be good this year, or do you think they're going to fall apart and be just awful? Let us know in the YouTube comments. But coming up, we are going to be power ranking the best Twin Towers lineups in the NBA, with the big man making a bit of a renaissance here in today's NBA. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss out on. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 only, and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. FanDuel's awesome because it gives you so many different ways to play. You can build out parlays, try different player props, even follow along live as the action unfolds in front of you. Or hey, maybe if you don't want to get that complicated with it, you can just go take a look at the outright betting favorites to see who's going to win the Super Bowl this season. Right now, the Bills sitting at plus 440. You got the Eagles at plus 600. You have the Lions and Packers both at plus 850. And rounding out the top 5, the Kansas City Chiefs at plus 1,000. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And final segment here at Locked On NBA Game Night. All right, David. We've seen a little bit of, I feel like it started a few years ago, right? The renaissance of the NBA big man, right? We started to see a number of bigs in the NBA really start to, become some of the best players in the league. Obviously, the rivalry between Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid kind of at the peak of that. Two of the best bigs in today's game. And then we started to slowly see other bigs really start to kind of crop up. And it kind of feels like there's been a bit of a renaissance there. But even beyond that, we've seen teams now, especially some of the top contending teams in each conference, rolling out these, double big lineups, either just as like their legit starting lineup, like the OKC Thunder did with Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein, or being able to roll out a situational double big lineup, right? Which, we just got done talking about Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson and how the Knicks, leaned into that at various points last season once Robinson was healthy. It looks like they're going to be going with that as their starting lineup this season. And so I thought it'd be fun for us to power rank what we think are the best Twin Towers lineups. So the best double big lineups across the NBA. And it could be any double big lineup. It doesn't have to necessarily be a double big that starts, but at least one that gets used a moderate amount by their respective team. And I think this should be a decently fun exercise here. Who do you think clocks in at number 1? If we're just going straight at the top, the best double big lineup in the entire NBA?
That's a really tough question because even before we started recording, like I suggested a team and that you haven't even really considered there. Like you were kind of debating whether or not they're going to be out there or there should be viewed as a double big. And I don't know if the criteria is so clearly defined, because now we're looking at I think when you're talking about this era of the renaissance of the big man, it's just we're looking at 6'11" to 7 foot type players that have guard level skills that could do so much, that are on ball creators in a way that we've never really seen before throughout NBA history, except for spurts here and there. And it's not the typical. This isn't Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon, providing the kind of twin tower defense that you might expect. I don't know that we're going to see that kind of level of a dual big or out there on the NBA.
There's a bunch of Mobley and Allen fans who are just irate at you right now. They're like, we are seeing that level of defense right now. We witnessed it last season. It was great.
Maybe you're right. I mean, enough strong argument for the number one. I think I would turn to lean Milwaukee. If you want to look at the combination of Miles Turner and Giannis Antetokounmpo, for no other reason than because Giannis is as dominant as he is, and Turner should be a solid complementary player, providing some outside shooting, a 3-and-B type player, able to block shots and provide some solid defense in a way that we saw him over his career with Indiana. So it's a tough one. For me, I'd go with either Cleveland or Milwaukee, and I think I'd give the edge to Milwaukee just because Giannis is clearly the best player of this four-man duo, the four-man group that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I find it tough. And if you weren't truly following along with the conversation, Milwaukee was the one that I was kind of on the fence of, like, does Giannis and Miles Turner, do they count as a true double big lineup the way that we're seeing it utilized in today's NBA? But I do think they count, right? They're both 6'11", 7 feet tall. They are both legitimate bigs out there on the floor. They occupy a ton of space, even though they're not bigs in necessarily the traditional sense, right? They're not lumbering. They're not oversized. They're not, whatever you want to use, whatever descriptors you want to use to try and define big man. Although we might get to some lineups here, some combinations that do match those descriptions here in just a moment. I don't hate the answer, but I'm cautious to go Giannis and Turner, if only because they're going to be brand new teammates. Like, we haven't seen them play together. And so it's really hard for me to give them the number one spot on the list without having seen it in action to see how complementary they actually are of one another. Does that pairing really work? In theory, it should, and there shouldn't be any reason why, Turner can't have just as much, if not more success next to Giannis, similar to what Brook Lopez did years ago. Right. But the dynamic is also different, even on the defensive side of things, right? Brook Lopez was this towering DPOY style big man that the Bucks defense for years funneled everybody inside to, right? That was their whole MO defensively. Turner isn't that style of big man defender, right? He's a great weak side shot blocker. He's a good rim deterrent, but he's not the guy that you want to funnel all the perimeter guys into and expect him to clean everything up at the rim and deny all those shots at the basket. So from that perspective, I don't know if the defense is going to be nearly as dominant with Giannis and Turner as it was with Giannis and Brook Lopez. I feel like I kind of have to give it to Mobley and Allen just because of how good they really were last season.
That's fair. They'd be my number two for that. I think, again, they're a good duo. Obviously, Mobley, defensive player of the year. I think Allen, a solid defender. Allen, not much of a scorer, but a solid rebounder. Just accepts his role as very, very solid, has been throughout his career. And I think in Mobley, you're seeing an ascending star. And I think somebody who can really kind of change the conversation as how we view, or at least further it in how we view these versatile bigs, because he does have those kinds of skills. And as long as he can continue to be a consistent outside threat and find his offense, I think he's going to find that balance. So it's a really interesting pairing because both of them all-star experience now, and I think they've got a bright present and a bright future ahead.
Where do we put Holmgren and Hartenstein, though? Because they're the defending champions. The Thunder had a historic defense, and they had a historic defense both without the double big lineup, and they maintained the historic defense when they did start utilizing the double big lineup once both guys were actually healthy later in the season. Where do you think you slot those guys in at? Honestly,
I'd probably put them at 5.
That low?
I think so. I think I'd put them behind New York and Minnesota even at this point. I think we're talking about Hartenstein providing some great sparks there, but I mean, of all the players we've mentioned so far, he's statistically and productively the worst of them. Like, he doesn't help. We're talking about Oklahoma City, a team that's so deep and has such great, scoring from J-Dub and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. What are we really counting on from either Chet or Hartenstein, but to be just complementary players. Like they're great role players that both happen to be really tall, but I don't know that they can be the dominant bigs that we're talking about when you're looking at the rest of the players in this group. Maybe I'm just looking at it from a completely different perspective than you are, but I see them and they're two really solid bigs. No knock on what they do. No knock on Oklahoma City, of course. Obviously a very dynamic team. Are they instrumental to the team's success? I wouldn't go so far as to say so. They're very good in what the role they have, and they're great complementary players, but they're not the drivers to that team's championship success.
I think I see where you're coming from with it, and I get it. I understand the thought process. Like, it's almost like you could replace either of Chet or Hartenstein with a player that does maybe 80%, 70% of what they provide, and the drop off for OKC wouldn't be anywhere near as substantial as if they lost one of their true, key guys like SGA or J-Dub. And maybe that is underselling Chet, especially his defensive contributions and kind of what he does as their, I can't ask. Maybe I do, whatever, small ball five, because Chet's still really skinny. But that's honestly not too bad for them then at that ranking. Some of the other ones that we have here, some of the other duos, the pairs that we have on this list, we talked about them in the first segment. Karl-Anthony Towns, Mitchell Robinson. Do they crack the top five in your eyes, or are they falling out of that top five?
I think I'd have them at fourth, just because of what we talked about from Karl-Anthony Towns. Defensive issues. You get some of that balance back by Robinson and what he provides. And he's not a very good scorer either, but he's a legitimate lob threat. He's still a guy who can attack the rim and finish at a high level. And he's mostly pretty efficient in that role. At the same time, Karl-Anthony Towns, such a great scorer, like very unique. And I've always wanted to appreciate what he does because he is so special on that side of the ball. But the deficiencies in his game are so glaring to me that I'd put him at 4 overall, despite how much I like what he can do. What he can't do really just sticks in my craw because I just can't. I find it so hard to accept that he couldn't be a better defensive player, that he couldn't just give more on both ends of the floor and still continue to be the dominant scorer that he is.
I don't hate the rank. I don't hate Cat and Robinson there, but at the same time, I feel like that duo, of all the duos that we've talked about so far, does have, like, Cat's is so limited defensively at times, and not even at times, like pretty consistently, right? Being the Achilles heel for that Knicks team defensively. And then Robinson, as good as he is defensively and as good as he is as an over-the-top lob threat, he does have a lot of limitations in his game. He's at the rim or bust. Maybe we see a different side of Robinson this season. Maybe we see a little bit more creativity out of Mike Brown offensively. Maybe Robinson does have some passing chops there that haven't really been on display previously under former head coach Tom Thibodeau. And maybe that would change my perception of him a little bit. But I actually don't think I'm going to have Cat and Robinson in my top 5 of my Twin Tower lineups here, just because I do think there are some glaring holes in that duo, unfortunately, that will continue to get exposed throughout this season. Here's one that we haven't seen yet. So another like newcomer to the ring, but it was hinted that we might see some minutes of Nikola Jokic and Jonas Valanciunas sharing the floor this season. Do you buy that, David? Do you think we'll actually see like the massive Euro Twin Towers of Jokic and Valanciunas sharing the court together?
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, we'll get spot minutes here and there, but at the same time, I mean, I think you're over relying on your front court depth there, and to put them out there at the same time kind of puts you in a position where you might have a risk of injury or foul trouble or something like that. So we'll see minutes, but either way, I think Valanciunas, okay, is a great backup at this stage in his career. I just don't necessarily think even as good as Jokic is individually, and maybe you can make the same argument as I made for Giannis, Jokic being the best player on the planet, you could pair him with anybody and it's probably should be the best duo in the league. And yet I think Valanciunas is such a drop off from where he once was, and he's not quite the player that he was. And so I would have them in my top 5. What about here's a team that we haven't talked about. What about Dallas? Derek Lively, Anthony Davis. Would you consider that a double big lineup?
Absolutely. I'd consider that a double big lineup. And that one's really
them at 3 then.
You've got them at 3?
I do.
Okay. I like it, if only because AD is just so good, right? Like when AD is at his best, like he's arguably, a similar level of impact as Giannis. And I think he fits the bill maybe a bit more in the traditional sense of that actual double big lineup.
Sure.
Hell, honestly, I might like the AD Lively double big more than I like the Giannis Turner double big, for at least for the purposes of this debate. But man, that is a really good one. That's a deep cut. I didn't actually have them on my little pool here as I was drawing through, canvassing the rest of the NBA. So I'm glad you pulled that one. Damn, that makes me have to change up I'm thinking about it in my head now. Now I'm a little stuck because one duo that we're missing two duos that we haven't talked about. I think you mentioned them in passing momentarily, but Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid is one.
Yep.
And that's been, kind of a staple of the Wolves front court for the past couple seasons. Seeing those Gobert and Reid minutes together. And then Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams. That's the other one that kind of, they were late to the party last season, but they kind of took the NBA by storm to close out the regular season. And in those minutes together, they had one of the best two-man lineup net ratings in the entire NBA in those minutes that they spent together. And they were dominant in the playoffs as well against the Golden State Warriors. They were like a net plus 30 or something in those minutes that they played together. It was absurd. I don't know how my list is going to shake out now because the Dallas one throws kind of a wrench into things for me. So what's your final list here, David?
I've got Milwaukee 1, Cleveland 2, Dallas 3, New York 4, and OKC 5.
I think Cleveland for me, because you went Milwaukee 1. I had to go Cleveland 1 just because they've been together the longest. They showed the most dominance throughout the regular season. And I do expect Mobley and Allen probably, Allen might start plateauing here, but I do expect Mobley to continue getting better. So I'll give them 1 on my list here. I do think I'm higher on Gobert and Reid just because Gobert is still a walking top 5 defense by himself, and Naz Reid is such a great compliment to him in those minutes. I think I kind of have to slot them in it too. I'm gonna go Sengun Adams at 3. You call me a homer if you want to. Yeah, I knew it was coming, but hey, the proof is in the pudding. The net rating doesn't lie, right? You can go debate. You can go debate the facts.
Net rating.
The net rating's there, man. And hey, it could be the Rockets starting lineup this season, so we'll see how that plays out. I'm going Sengun Adams at 3. I'm going with your Mavs pick actually. AD and Lively, AD's health permitting, I do think is one of the better double big lineups in the entire league. So I'm going with that one at 4. And again, I'm a little lower on Giannis Turner, but I'll put them in there at 5. So that's my list right there. We got your list. We want to know your list, though, dear listener, because David's incredulous at my including Sengun and Adams.
I didn't go Bam and Adebayo, Khalil Ware, the future here. I could have thrown that team into the mix.
Hey, Bam is basically, for the purposes of this discussion, he's basically a Cabbage Patch Kid. Okay, he's 6'9". Get out of here with that. This is that's not a Twins Towers lineup.
No, it's Reid 6'8". That's Reid 6'8". What are we talking about here?
I think he's listed a lot taller than that. I think maybe the listed height is completely off. But all right, we want to know your thoughts. Who are the best double big lineups, the best Twin Towers lineups in the NBA? Let us know in the YouTube comments. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. For your next listen, go check out our sister show here on the Locked On NBA channel, our Locked On NBA Daily Show with Matt, Hayes, and Doug. Be on the lookout for that. Until then, we will catch you guys on our next game night.